lying there in shorts and a t-shirt and she's groaning. She's lying in the backyard on her back. She looks like she's struggling.
So I'm so sorry to report that over the course of the weekend at around midnight on the early hours of Sunday morning, police were called to Leinster Road, reported for shooting. At that location we found that the property had been forcefully entered, multiple shots had been fired, and a young lady who we now know to be Ashley Dale had been shot and fatally wounded. Ashley was a lovely young woman with a career in front of her, worked for Knowsley Council and had recently graduated and had a promotion at work. She was in her own home and should have been safe at that time.
4 men have been found guilty of murder after a woman was shot at her home. Ashley Dale was killed by a gunman who fired a Skorpion submachine gun in August 2022.
James. Okay, mate, can you just play everything you got on top there for him?
Yeah, no bother. Just open door for us, mate, until we confirm your identity. We'll put you in handcuffs. What's your name, fella? Say that again.
August 21st, 2022 was supposed to be just another quiet evening for 28-year-old Ashley Dale, an environmental health officer with a bright future ahead of her. But inside her home in Old Swan, Liverpool, a storm was brewing, one that she had sensed for weeks, even recorded voice notes about, but could never escape. As the night settled in, masked intruders kicked down her front door and unleashed a spray of bullets from a military-grade Skorpion submachine gun. One of those bullets ended Ashley's life. The most chilling part? She wasn't the intended target. This wasn't random. It was a message, born out of gang rivalries, drug feuds, and revenge, and Ashley became the tragic collateral. The case would expose deep criminal undercurrents, a boyfriend with deadly enemies, and a young woman whose final digital words would help bring her killers to justice. What happened that night and why would haunt an entire city and leave a grieving family demanding answers.
Can't compute why this has happened to Ashley, why this happened to her. Sheer waste. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's difficult, and then, still having to get up every day and still be mum, but then, getting the kids off to school and then getting up and going to sit in a courtroom and, doing that every day, and then coming home and then switching back into being mum mode again. And it's hard, really, really hard.
Ashley Dale was known for her kind nature, dedication to her career, and love for her family and her little dachshund, Darla. She worked as an environmental health officer for Knowsley Council and had no known criminal ties of her own. But behind the scenes, her personal life had become entangled in something far darker. Her long-term partner, Lee Harrison, had a history of involvement with drugs and organized crime, connections that Ashley neither condoned nor participated in. Still, she was aware of the danger that loomed around them. Tensions began to escalate during the summer of 2022. A confrontation between Lee Harrison and rival gang members at Glastonbury Festival reportedly reignited a long-standing feud. Ashley had sensed something was wrong. In a series of haunting voice notes sent to friends in the days leading up to her murder, she described her increasing fear and anxiety. She mentioned seeing men lurking outside her home and described being too scared to sleep at night. These messages, filled with concern and dread, would later become key pieces of evidence in court. Ashley's own voice predicting the violence that would eventually take her life. Despite the warnings she shared, Ashley tried to go about her life. On the night of August 20th, she spent her evening at home watching television, texting friends, and taking care of her dog. Lee Harrison was not there. He was out with friends, perhaps unknowingly leaving Ashley to face the consequences of his rivalries alone. She had no idea that within hours, her worst fears would come true. The undercurrent of violence that had been building around her life was about to erupt in a way no one could reverse. In the early hours of August 21st, 2022, at approximately 12:30 a.m., the peace of Ashley Dale's home on Leinster Road in Old Swan was shattered. Two masked men, James Witham and Joseph Piers, arrived at the property under the cover of darkness. Witham, carrying a Skorpion submachine gun, forced his way through the front door while Piers waited outside, acting as the getaway driver. Their mission was clear: send a deadly message to Lee Harrison, Ashley's boyfriend. But Harrison wasn't home, and Ashley became the unintended target. Ashley, who had been lounging in her living room, fled in panic, trying to escape through the garden. But she had no chance. One of the bullets fired from the rapid-fire weapon struck her in the abdomen and caused catastrophic internal injuries. She collapsed in the yard, crying out for help. Neighbors reported hearing the gunshots, and one even rushed outside to find Ashley clinging to life.
I've just heard a loud noise in the back. I've stood on my back wall and the house immediately to the back of us. There's a lady lying there in shorts and a t-shirt and she's groaning. She's lying in the backyard on her back. She looks like she's struggling.
Emergency services were called, but despite efforts to save her, she was pronounced dead shortly after being transported to the hospital. The scene left behind was one of terror and chaos.
If there's anyone here, make yourself known! Officers with taser. Back door's open. Is it? Yeah. Chris, you've got taser on to the lead, mate. I'm gonna walk through. Hopefully I'll blow up my refresher. Back door is open. Right. Please.
Yeah, right.
Go shift the back. What's the report?
Get down your back. Is that last patrol on the road?
A total of 10 bullets had been fired, recklessly, with no concern for who might be caught in the crossfire. Investigators later revealed that the weapon used was designed for military use, highlighting the brutality and premeditation of the attack. Forensics recovered shell casings in multiple rooms, indicating that Witham had stormed through the house, firing indiscriminately. Surveillance footage later captured the attackers fleeing in a stolen car, which was later found burned out, a common tactic used by gang members to destroy evidence. But what truly shocked investigators wasn't just the violence, it was the clear targeting of a woman who had no part in the criminal underworld. Ashley Dale had no criminal record, no gang ties, and no reason to be caught in such a horrific act. Her only link to the attackers was her relationship with Lee Harrison, and that alone had cost her everything. As detectives began piecing together the timeline, they discovered Ashley's voice notes to her friends, recordings that revealed how scared she was, how she feared something was coming. She spoke of being watched, of not feeling safe in her own home, and even questioned whether her relationship with Harrison was putting her life at risk. Her final days were filled with tension, and those words would later become haunting premonitions, echoing through the courtroom when justice was finally served. From the moment Ashley Dale's murder was reported, Merseyside police launched a full-scale investigation. The brutality and precision of the attack, along with the use of a military-grade Skorpion submachine gun, made one thing clear. This was a targeted killing, not a random act of violence. Within hours, the major incident team was mobilized, combing through the crime scene for shell casings, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. One of the most crucial early leads came from Ashley's mobile phone. Investigators discovered a trove of voice notes she had sent to friends in the days and weeks leading up to her death. These recordings painted a vivid picture of the danger she felt closing in around her. She spoke of seeing unfamiliar men near her home, of escalating tensions between her boyfriend Lee Harrison and other criminal figures, and of her own growing paranoia. One voice note in particular referenced a confrontation involving Harrison at Glastonbury Festival, a seemingly minor event that turned out to be a catalyst for the deadly feud. These voice notes were not only heartbreaking, they were damning. They established motive, timeline, and emotional context, providing insight into just how aware Ashley was of the threat and how helpless she felt. Police also recovered extensive CCTV footage, mapping the movements of the suspects before and after the attack. Hours of video showed the stolen Hyundai used in the shooting being driven across Liverpool, later abandoned and torched to destroy evidence. But it wasn't enough. Through a combination of surveillance data, phone records, and witness interviews, detectives identified 4 key suspects: James Witham, the gunman, Joseph Piers, the getaway driver, and Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss, 2 gang members believed to have orchestrated the attack. All 4 had connections to Lee Harrison's criminal past, and all were implicated in a long-running feud that had already resulted in previous threats and violence. As the net closed in, Witham initially denied involvement, but later admitted to being the shooter. He claimed, however, that he did not intend to kill Ashley and that he believed the house was empty. That defense quickly crumbled in court, as forensic evidence, digital trails, and those chilling voice notes told a different story. Detectives also discovered encrypted messages among the suspects that hinted at planning and revenge, further solidifying the theory that the attack was premeditated and carefully executed. Lee Harrison, Ashley's boyfriend, became a point of contention during the investigation. Despite being the likely intended target, he refused to cooperate with police. His silence drew sharp criticism from both law enforcement and Ashley's family, who believed he could have helped bring the killers to justice sooner. Eventually, Harrison himself was arrested in an unrelated drug case, exposing even more layers to the criminal world Ashley had tried to distance herself from. By late 2022, police had built a solid case against the 4 suspects. With Ashley's voice guiding them from beyond the grave, investigators prepared to take the case to trial, determined to ensure her killers would face the full weight of justice. The trial of Ashley Dell's killers began in October 2023 at Liverpool Crown Court and gripped the city with its chilling details, emotional testimony, and the tragic narrative of a young woman caught in the crossfire of a gangland feud she never asked to be part of. 4 men stood in the dock: James Witham, Joseph Peers, Sean Zeiss, and Niall Barry, each accused of playing a vital role in the planning and execution of Ashley's murder. From the outset, the prosecution made it clear this was not a case of mistaken identity or a robbery gone wrong. It was a targeted hit, a deliberate attempt to intimidate or kill Lee Harrison that resulted in Ashley's death. The prosecution's case was heavily bolstered by forensic evidence, phone records, encrypted messages, and, most significantly, the voice notes Ashley had recorded. In one of the most haunting moments of the trial, the court listened to Ashley's own voice describe her fear, her suspicions, and her sense of impending doom. She spoke of the beef that had reignited between Harrison and Barry after Glastonbury, her dread of being watched, and her gut feeling that something terrible was coming. Those recordings painted a vivid picture of her final days and served as a powerful testimony of her awareness that she was living on the edge of a dangerous conflict. James Witham admitted to being the gunman, but claimed he never meant to kill Ashley. He said he thought the house was empty and that he was only there to send a message to Harrison. But prosecutors dismantled this claim with evidence of careful planning, including the use of a stolen car, burner phones, and the presence of multiple accomplices who acted in coordination. The weapon used, the Skorpion submachine gun, was not something brought along for intimidation. It was a weapon designed to kill. Joseph Peers was identified as the driver who dropped Witham off and helped coordinate the escape. Messages showed Peers communicating with the others before and after the murder, including instructions to destroy evidence. Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss were portrayed as the orchestrators, motivated by revenge, gang loyalty, and control. They had allegedly greenlit the operation, knowing Harrison might not be home, and fully aware that Ashley could become collateral damage. Throughout the trial, the courtroom was packed with family, friends, and members of the public. Ashley's parents, Julia and Steve Dale, attended nearly every session, enduring the painful recounting of their daughter's final moments. The defense tried to distance each of the men from direct responsibility, suggesting they weren't aware of the full extent of the plan or that the killing wasn't premeditated. But the evidence told a different story, a story of a carefully planned execution gone horribly wrong. On November 20th, 2023, after weeks of testimony, the jury returned guilty verdicts for all 4 men. The judge condemned the group for their cowardice, their utter disregard for human life, and their role in robbing an innocent woman of her future.
At 11:40 p.m. on the 20th of August last year, a Hyundai car drove into Leinster Road in Old Swan, Liverpool. Inside were 2 men, James Witham and Joseph Peers. They drove there as a result of a criminal agreement with Niall Barry and Sean Zeiss to kill the occupants of 40 Leinster Road using a Skorpion submachine gun.
During sentencing 2 days later,
I sentence each of you to imprisonment for life on count 1 for the murder of Ashley Dale. Niall Barry, on count 1, murder, your minimum term is increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2, 3, and in the second indictment. Your minimum term is 47 years, less 433 days served on remand. James Witham, on count 1, murder, your minimum term is also increased to 35 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending on counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 43 years, less 295 days served on remand. Joseph Pearce, on count 1, murder, your minimum term is increased to 33 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3. Your minimum term is 41 years, less 295 days served on remand. Sean Zeiss, on count 1, murder, your minimum term is increased to 32 years, but must be further increased to reflect your offending in counts 2 and 3 and the second indictment. Your minimum term is 42 years, less 448 days served on remand. On count 2, conspiracy to murder, I impose a concurrent sentence of imprisonment for life on each of you, with a minimum term of 18 years custody. On count 3, conspiracy to possess a prohibited firearm and ammunition with intent to endanger life, I impose a concurrent sentence of 14 years imprisonment on each of you. The sentences on the second indictment of 30 years imprisonment for you, Barry, and 10 years for you, Zeiss, will also be served concurrently. You will each be required to pay the statutory charge, but in your cases, Zeiss and Barry, I postpone the making of the order until the conclusion of the confiscation proceedings under the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. In your cases, Pearce and Witham, I make the surcharge order now, which will be in the appropriate amount and set out in the court order. Take them down.
Witham received life with a minimum of 43 years, Pearce was sentenced to 41 years, Zeiss to 42 years, and Barry, considered the ringleader, was given 47 years. In total, their combined prison time added up to 173 years. As the verdicts were read, there was silence in the courtroom, followed by quiet sobs from Ashley's loved ones. Justice, though long and painful, had finally been served. But as her family would later say, no sentence could ever make up for what was lost that night. The convictions brought a sense of justice, but not peace for Ashley Dale's family.
People talk about justice, and again, justice is making these people pay for what they've done, and that is justice. However, in my eyes, I don't feel like there'll ever be justice for me, or for Ashley, because if justice as this wouldn't have happened. But yeah, it is obviously very important from day one to catch these people, to charge these people, and then bring these people to court and make them pay. So yeah, it is very, very important. I don't think it's going to stop. I think it will carry on. Hoping these large sentences that are being given out to people will start making people think, oh, hang on, it's not just going to be my life, it's going, to my family's life and everything else. It's a ripple effect of that crime what they've done, that it ruins their own life. So
her parents, Julia and Steve Dale, spoke openly about the unbearable pain of losing their only daughter in such a violent and senseless way. Julia described waking up each morning, hoping it was all a nightmare, only to be faced with the brutal reality that Ashley was gone. Her father, Steve, said the life they once knew had ended the moment Ashley took her last breath. Though grateful for the tireless efforts of Merseyside police and the legal team, they made it clear that the trauma would never truly heal. In the days following the verdict, tributes poured in from the community, co-workers, and even national leaders. Ashley was remembered not as a victim, but as a young woman full of life, kind, ambitious, and deeply loved. Her murder sparked outrage across Liverpool, prompting renewed calls for tougher action on gang violence and illegal firearms. The Skorpion submachine gun used in her killing, a weapon of war, served as a grim symbol of how far organized crime had infiltrated everyday neighborhoods. Merseyside police were praised for their work, especially in securing digital evidence like Ashley's voice notes and encrypted messages that helped tie the suspects to the crime? Detectives spoke about how Ashley, in a way, helped solve her own murder.
There's been thousands of exhibits seized in this investigation, and over 300 of those were digital devices. But I suppose the most important piece of evidence was Ashley's phone herself that was only found arm's length away from her. She had an iPhone, like many of us, and she lived a life on her phone. And Ashley actually recording or sending voice notes to her friends, describing what was going on in her life, was running parallel to the investigation. It was Ashley narrating what was going on and what led up ultimately to her death. It was vital in us understanding the motive. It was detailing to us the characters that were involved in this, the threats that were being made to come round to the house, with the intended target being her partner at the time, Harrison, that we've obviously heard a lot about through this trial.
By having the courage to speak about her fears, even when no one could fully grasp how real the danger was. Her voice became both a warning and a legacy, forcing the justice system to look harder at the ripple effects of gang culture. Lee Harrison, the man Ashley had loved and who was the presumed target of the hit, remained a controversial figure. He refused to cooperate with investigators throughout the murder investigation, citing fears for his own safety. His silence frustrated both the police and Ashley's family, who believed his help could have saved precious time and potentially prevented future tragedies. In December 2024, Harrison was arrested and later convicted for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, crack cocaine, and heroin. In February 2025, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, a move many saw as a delayed reckoning with the world Ashley had been dragged into. One of Ashley's closest friends later created a foundation in her name, aiming to support young people impacted by gang violence and to promote awareness of domestic warning signs tied to criminal behavior. Local councils also began reviewing how to better protect civilians who might be caught in the orbit of organized crime, even if they themselves are not involved. As the city of Liverpool mourned the loss of yet another innocent life, Ashley's case became a national wake-up call, a reminder that behind every feud, every grudge, every act of street justice lies the potential for innocent bloodshed. For Ashley Dale's family, the convictions offered accountability, but the absence left behind could never be filled. Their daughter was gone, taken not by fate, but by choice, by men who decided that fear, control, and revenge mattered more than a life full of promise. Ashley Dale's murder was not just another statistic in a city struggling with organized crime. It was a tragedy that cut across every boundary of morality, justice, and human decency. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't involved in a gang. She was a public servant, a daughter, a friend, and a young woman simply trying to live her life. And yet she was hunted down in her own home, executed for a message meant for someone else. Her death didn't just highlight the recklessness of street feuds, it exposed how the lives of the innocent are increasingly being consumed by battles they never chose to fight. The courtroom saw justice served. The sentences handed down were among the longest seen in recent years for such a crime. 4 men locked away for a combined 173 years. But for Ashley's family, justice was only one piece of the story. They now live with the weight of memories, birthdays uncelebrated, and dreams left unfinished. Her parents have become voices of advocacy, not because they wanted to, but because their daughter's death left them no other choice. Ashley's haunting voice notes remain etched into the public consciousness, a young woman who sensed the danger approaching, but who had no power to stop it. In a cruel twist, her own words would help bring down the men who took her life. In doing so, Ashley became more than a victim. She became the key witness in her own case, a silent fighter whose fear turned into evidence, whose story turned into action. Her case has since prompted discussions about how partners of criminal offenders, especially women, are exposed to invisible risks. Authorities are reassessing how to better protect individuals in similar circumstances, how to tackle the roots of gang violence, and how to take illegal firearms off the streets. But for many, the biggest lesson comes not from policy, but from Ashley herself. A reminder that the price of silence, denial, and unresolved feuds can be unimaginably high. Ashley Dale's legacy is one of strength, heartbreak, and reluctant heroism. Her story will not be forgotten, because in the end, she did not die in vain. She exposed a criminal network, shattered public complacency, and left behind a message louder than gunfire. No more innocent lives should be lost to someone else's war.